When I first moved back to Atlanta, I would work on my new jokes at Jerry Farber's Comedy Club. And I noticed when I was there that some of the young comedians, the amateur comedians, were doing things that I thought were wrong, things that were stopping them from getting laughs, and I would give advice to them about it. Well, I found that the ones that took my advice, they immediately got better. So 8 of them got together, asked me to put together a class, teach them what I knew, and which I did. So at the end of the class, I said, hey, let's put on a show. Invite your friends and family, it'll be fun. Well, we packed the club and they were hilarious. But what really floored me was at the end of the show, their friends came up and said, have you ever thought about doing this for normal people? You know, people that don't want to be stand-up comedians, because this looks like it could be fun doing this one night. And I said, well, I haven't considered it, but I tell you what, give me your phone number. If I ever decide to do it again, I'll give you a call. And that was over 3,000 students ago. I'm Jeff Justice. This is Keynotes, the art of being funny. You all been to Canada? As a group? Wow. Travel together, that's good to see. Customs guys up there could use a little sense of humor, right? No, really, I'm driving through and the guy's like, do you have any drugs? I'm like, oh yeah, what do you need? I first started doing stand-up comedy in 1981, right here in Atlanta, Georgia. And then eventually moved up to New York, where I became a headliner, performing at comedy clubs and casinos from coast to coast. Even got to do some fun TV shows like Caroline's Comedy Hour, Comedy on the Road, Thicker Than Night. But then about 32 years ago, starting with those 8 amateur comedians in that first class, I wound up building Jeff Justice's Comedy Workshop into the largest, most successful school for stand-up comedy in the country. And it always amazed me because I thought it was going to be stand-up comedians that wanted to take the class. It turned out to be normal people, right? I mean, like house husbands, college students, corporate executives, politicians. One class, I even had a priest and a call girl. But I'll tell you what, one thing that I found consistent through my entire 32 years teaching stand-up comedy is that anybody can be funny, as long as their check clears. They say that the 2 biggest fears in life are number 1, speaking in front of a group of people, and number 2, dying. Can you believe that? Dying is number 2? I always like what Jerry Seinfeld had to say about it. He said, you realize that means that the average person would rather be in the casket than given the eulogy. Really, fear is a real thing, but stage fright, that's very rare. Many of my students say, I don't know if I'm going to be able to go on the graduation show because I have stage fright. I said, no, you're just scared. That's all, you're trying something new. It's normal to be scared, to be crazy not to be. A lot of students will ask me, hey, how do I know if I'm funny? Pretty simple. Have you ever been speaking, and then when you stop speaking, people were laughing? You're funny. That's pretty much the definition of it. All right? So if people are laughing in normal day life with you, you've got a sense of humor. If they're not laughing, I can help you with that. Because what I found is probably most of the people watching this show don't want to become stand-up comedians. All they want to do is be able to tell jokes a little better with their friends. All right? Well, I find what most people do is that it's not that they're bad joke tellers, is that they're bad at preparing to tell a joke. Right? They'll hear a great joke somewhere, and then it'll be like, days, if not a few weeks later, before they tell the joke again. And what usually happens, you can probably relate to this, you get about halfway through the joke, you have no idea what's going on, and you're like, then it's something about a chicken and a donkey. And then everybody checks their watch, walks away, and the joke dies. I wanted to find out what is the best way to learn jokes. So I went to the professionals, bartenders and salesmen. They always have the best jokes, don't they? It's not actually that they always have the best jokes, it's that they tell jokes the best. And the reason why they do is because the bartender will be working at night. He'll come over here, Bob will tell him a joke. Hey, that's a great joke, Bob, thanks. Walks over here, hey, Bill, got a good joke for you. Tells him that joke. Then he comes over here, hey, Sally, I got a joke for you, right? Hey, Tom, I got a joke for you. Next thing you know, within a short period of time, he's told that joke to 3, 4, 5, 6 different people. Each time he tells it, it's getting better, all right? Same thing with salesmen. They go different sales calls. They tell that new joke over and over again to different people until they have it down. So they are actually doing the practice. Do you realize that George Carlin said before he would do a new joke on stage, he will practice it at least 50 times out loud? Now that was a man dedicated to learning his craft, right? So practice your jokes, and I guarantee you'll be a lot funnier at them. Because people who say to me, I can't tell a joke. No, you can't put aside the time to practice to get better at telling the jokes. I think anybody can do it. Now, if you are going to actually do stand-up comedy, make sure you stay true to yourself, that, your jokes match who you are. Like I had one young guy, right? Can't be more than 20 years old, and he's doing jokes about being divorced 4 times. I looked at him and said, you've been divorced 4 times? He goes, oh, no, I've never been married. I said, well, why are you doing jokes about being divorced? He says, well, I thought they'd be funny. I said, well, they're not, because they're not true. The premise isn't true that you could be married 4 times by the time you're 20 years old. And Johnny Carson would say that if the audience doesn't buy the premise, they're not going to buy the joke. Okay? And then another young guy who all of his jokes was about how poor he was. And then graduation night, he shows up, and this guy's dressed to the nines. He's got like on an $800-900 Yves Saint Laurent suit. And you think the audience bought the fact that his jokes were saying that he was poor? No, not at all. And so you got to be consistent with who you are on stage. And remember that no matter what you do, no matter what jokes you write, you can't please everybody. All right, I can tell you, during my best shows where 95% of the audience is laughing, falling out of their chairs, there's always some guy up front sitting there going, Now, you don't know what kind of day that guy has, so don't worry about him. Don't try to get him to laugh. Just concentrate on the ones that are laughing, all right? And don't try to write your jokes to please everybody. People will say, well, people like jokes about cops and donut shops or airline food or blind dates. No, that's the wrong thing to do, because now you're trying to be funny, writing what you think is going to be funny to them. Write what's funny to yourself. All right? Be true to yourself. And I promise you, if your jokes are original jokes about yourself, you do the practice, you put that in. When you get on stage, who knows, maybe someday you'll look at an audience, just like Sally Fields, and say, you like me. You really like me. All right, if you're going to do stand-up comedy, one thing you should realize right off the bat is the audience starts making up their mind about you from the moment you hit that stage. So I always like to start with a nice smile on my face, okay? Now, if you're a deadpan comedian, that wouldn't work for you. Or if you're a super high over-the-top energy person, that wouldn't work for you either. But for me and for most of my students, that's a great way to start. So I'm smiling, I'm looking at the audience, want to make sure I know where the stage is when I step up. Right? And I'm connecting. Right? I'm looking at the audience. There's people over here, back over here. I come up, take the mic out, put the mic stand behind me, don't have to look back there, nothing back there to hit, and then I take a step forward, which is a self-confidence move. Non-verbally, it says, I own this place. This is my house. All right? And as I look through the audience, I'm looking into the darkness, because most comedy clubs are dark. So to the audience, it looks like I'm looking at them in the face. But to me, if I don't want to have to stare in somebody's eyes, I can just look into the darkness and I get the same effect. So now, I want you to see this 2 different ways. One is somebody very confident walking on stage, and then see what it looks like when usually a new amateur is walking on the stage who's more concerned about the mic stand than he is connecting with the audience. So I want you to think about it for yourselves. Which one of these people do you want to spend the next amount of time listening to? this person who's great, thanks, super to be here tonight. Boy, what a great looking crowd. Or this person, bachelor number 2, okay? Hey, great to be here. Boy, what a good-looking crowd. Does that second person inspire confidence in you? No, I would be cringing in my seat thinking I have to listen to that person for the next 10, 20, 30 minutes. Okay? So confidence, walking on stage, your body language tells the audience that you're in charge and being confident. Right. Try not to move back and forth on stage. I always call this the seasick motion. People, they're telling jokes, moving back and forth. Or standing just like this, too. To me, this is the runner position. Because the audience, it looks like you're thinking, well, if this joke doesn't work, I'm out of here. You don't want to give that impression either, okay? And also, moving back on your jokes. When you deliver the punchline and you move back on it, non-verbally it's saying, gee, I don't think this joke was funny. How about you? Did you? Oh, okay. So stay up here. You don't have to plant yourself in one place, but if I'm walking back and forth, I'm still connecting with the audience and staying basically on this plane here. And I think arm movements are important too on stage. If you're an expressive person and you're using your arms, using your hands, move your arms at the shoulders and not at the elbow. Okay, this is an open movement. Looks like you're very comfortable up here. This is a closed movement. My friend Harry used to look like he was trying to get back into fetal position on stage. I'm like, lighten up, loosen up. You know, the more relaxed you look up here, the more relaxed the audience is going to be as well. And try to keep from wandering on stage for no reason, which is you're just telling your jokes, you're going back and forth like this, there's no connection with the audience. If you're going to move on stage, move with a purpose. So if I'm saying a joke and this person's smiling, I say, see, you know what I'm talking about, don't you, sir? Yeah, he agrees with me, right? Yeah, you got that? So I'm connecting with this person over here, or this person here. There's a reason for me to move all the way over here if I'm going to say something to these people or direct what I'm saying to one of those people, as opposed to just going back and forth like this. And also, don't look down, okay? Because looking down non-verbally says, okay, what am I going to say next? Oh yeah, right. And new comedians have a habit of doing that. They don't know what to do when people are laughing, so they look down. As opposed to looking at the audience and just smiling, and I just smile and nod my head, and as long as they're laughing, I'm just looking at them, okay? Keeping that smile up there. So now that you know how to act on stage, how to connect to the audience, let's get to the meat of the whole reason why we're here. How do we make them laugh? All right, let's get to the meat of things here. How do you structure a joke? How do you write a joke? We're going to tell you, for beginning comedians, nothing's better than shorter is better. Okay, the less time that the audience has to spend listening to your setup, the easier it is to get your punchline across. And it's also the opposite too. The longer they have to listen to you, the funnier the punch word or the punchline has to be in order for you to get the same laugh. Like take, for example, a joke like, stop dating. My wife's idea. That's down to 4 words. That's pretty short. Not all jokes need to be that short. But it's just a 2-word setup and a 2-word punchline. Can't get any shorter than that. Like if you take, for example, the old Henny Youngman joke. He's talking about how women drive you crazy, and he says, well, I'd take my wife. Please. Right? And that joke, it's an old joke, I know, but I think it's a good example. Basically, the real part of the joke is only about 4 words. Take my wife, please. He uses a beat there. And in comedy, there's beats and pauses. A beat is, and a pause is, or longer. Of course, you don't have to stamp your feet. It's just that amount of time. I think the record for a pause was Jack Benny years ago on his TV show, 45 seconds. Pausing because the audience kept laughing. And we never talk when the audience laughs. But in the Henny Youngman joke, what the pause does, or the beat does, they both do the same type of thing, is it gives the audience time to process what you just said in your setup so that they can get the punchline. So if he had just said, "Take my wife, please," it wouldn't have the same effect. But to "take my wife, please," you get the chance to process it. Also, you notice that "please" does a few different things here. One, it changes the meaning of everything that went before it, because up to that point you're thinking he's saying "take my wife" as an example, and then you realize, no, he wants you to take her away. All right, and the second thing is you never say anything after the punch word. When you say the punch word, shut up. That's when people want to laugh. If he said, "Take my wife, please, would you do me a favor, because that would really help me?" Well, people are waiting to laugh while he's saying all those other words, and it dilutes the laughter. So once you say the punch word, that's it, nada, nothing else, until they stop laughing or applauding, okay? Which is what we're doing this all for, right? And one of the rules I love in comedy, kind of hard to get across to my students, but time and place always go first, except when time and place is what makes it funny. Also, when you put time and place first, you can just make a regular sentence much more powerful. For example, if I said, "When I get to work tomorrow morning, I'm going to tell my boss that he can take this job and stick it," as opposed to, "I'm going to tell my boss to take this job and stick it when I get to work tomorrow morning." You see how the first one has much more power than the second one? Try it sometime, putting time and place first. Unless, of course, if time and place is what makes it funny, and then it goes where? You got it. At the end, you've been paying attention out there. So an example might be, I'm one of those people, I love sleeping in the nude. To me, nothing's more enjoyable than waking up totally naked. I love it. People at church hate it. So here you see the place, church, has to go at the end, because that is what's making it funny. All right? And we've already told you the punch word is always the last word. It's never the second last word or the third last word, if you can possibly help it. Because remember, that's where people want to laugh, and if you keep talking, you're stopping them from laughing. And one of the things I realized over the years is attitude is just about everything. Because without attitude, it's just words. You have to have that delivery. Could you imagine Steve Martin with his famous lines, "Excuse me," just coming out and going, "Well, excuse me, I'm a wild, crazy guy," instead of his "excuse me," right? Well, attitude drives every joke. Like in a book, a lot of times you have to explain what's going on. They might say, "My wife said to me angrily," so the reader can pick up on it. But you would never do that on stage. I'd never say, "My wife said to me angrily." I'd say, "My wife said, what were you thinking? Are you crazy?" So you show them instead of tell them. I've heard that all my life. My wife, "Don't tell me you love me, show me you love me." All right, with an audience, don't tell them what's going on, show them what's going on, okay? And again, let that audience laugh. I forbid my students from talking while anybody is still laughing or applauding, because that's going to stop it. Of course, sometimes they take it to the extreme and I have to go, "Okay, it's been 30 seconds, go ahead and start talking." But for the most part, don't cut them off, don't kill your laughter. Well, one thing for sure is that your punchline needs energy. I'm not talking about over the top like Catskills energy, like "these are the jokes, folks," but it needs some energy. And that's one of the biggest sins that new comedians, especially in my classes, commit, is they drop their voice on the punchline. I would say never do that. There will be times that maybe you should, but for the most part, don't ever do it. Because what happens is somebody's telling a joke, and then they get to the end, and their voice drops down like that, and all the energy goes out of what they're saying. So always has some energy to it. And I'm sure one of the biggest fears that most people have about using comedy is what to do if the joke bombs. Right? They don't want to look silly or foolish. I have news for you. You don't have to use humor in order to look silly or foolish. I see serious people doing that every day. Look at politicians. Every single day, if not every hour. They're trying to be serious, looking silly or foolish. So don't let that be a deterrent to you with that. But it's going to happen. People ask me all the time, Jeff, you ever bomb? So of course I do, because I'm trying to get better. Jerry Seinfeld would say, if you're not bombing half the time, you're not getting any better. You're not doing anything new. But when I bomb, it basically, it might be one joke doesn't work, or very rarely do I ever go out there and bomb the whole show. I mean, something's definitely wrong with that. But usually, people want to know, what do I do if a joke doesn't work? Well, comedians, we have what we call safers. Those are things that we say to kind of loosen the tension about the joke not working. Well, first of all, really, is that if just one joke doesn't work, I usually don't say anything. I don't want to point out the fact that the audience is not laughing. But if I'm going two jokes, I might say something like, who thought that was funny? Apparently, just me, right? Or, and I wrote that one on the way here, and I'm going to throw it out on the way home. Or if I'm doing a business presentation, and guy over here introduces me, and during my presentation, joke bombs, so I turn around and go, boy, that's the last time I get a joke from Dick. Right? And they'll laugh because he's one of them. Okay, and one of the rules that I have is don't poke fun of the city that you're in or the group that you're talking to. All right? Don't go to some other city and tell them how backwards and bad their town is. Make fun of someplace else. Like if you're in Georgia, make fun of Alabama. If in Alabama, make fun of Mississippi. In Mississippi, make fun of New Jersey. Everybody else does, why not you? Or the other thing that gets me when I do corporate presentations, they want you to poke fun at them. Like if I do a program for lawyers, they say, oh, tell lawyer jokes, they love those. I say, well, then you tell them. And they'll say, well, you're the comedian. I say, yeah, but you're the lawyer. If I tell lawyer jokes, I'm poking fun at them. If you tell lawyer jokes, you're laughing at yourself. You're going to get the laughs out of that, not me. Something else you want to make sure of, and to help you keep from not bombing, is don't be too hip for the room. And what that means is don't make your joke about a reference that the audience doesn't have. Like let's say you're a black and white silent film nut, and you know all about silent films, and you want to do a Turbine Hill joke, who was an actor back then. All right? Well, if the audience doesn't know about black and white films, that joke's going to die. Now, if you go to the Society for Black and White Films, they'll be falling out of their chairs. So the basic rule is if you have to explain it, it's not fun. So if you want to start in comedy, one of the things I think you should do is take a class. All right? In your local town, get some instruction from somebody that knows what they're doing. All right? There's also a lot of online resources that you can find if you Google them as well, and there's plenty of books. But the number one thing that's going to help you get funny is write a lot, practice a lot, go on stage a lot. You can't get funny just sitting in your house by yourself. You have to go on stage. You have to try it out. Just like if you want to just be funny with your friends, you got to take a chance telling those jokes, but put the practice in so that your joke has the best possible chance of hitting a home run when you tell it to your buddies. Who can be funny? Who can do humor? I think just about anybody. Matter of fact, I had one guy take my class, the straightest person I ever met in my entire life. Matter of fact, at the graduation, his wife came up and said, boy, I've been married to him for 17 years. I never once heard him say something funny. I can't wait to see this. And he was hysterical. Why? Because he poked fun at himself for being a nerd, for being straight. And all of his friends knew that about him, that he was pretty much this boring guy. So when he was able to laugh at himself, it got great laughs with the audience. And I got to tell you, to this day, he'll call me up and go, well, Jeffrey, our little skit went over quite well the other night. And I guarantee he has no reason, no idea why the jokes work. He just does it the way I told him to, and he delivers it exactly like I told him to say it. And when he does that, it works for him every time. So I've got to tell you, if this guy can be funny, anybody can be funny. And how to be funny, get some training, okay? Learn the basics of stand-up comedy. There's great books out there on stand-up comedy. There's comedy classes like mine all around the country, okay? And there's also courses online that you can find too, so try Googling it, all right? But the main thing is you got to get out there and write, and write a lot. You'll be lucky if every 10 jokes you write, 1 or 2 of them work, okay? So you got to put in a lot of writing, got to put in a lot of practice. Remember what we said before, George Carlin practices a new joke 50 times before he's ever going to do it on stage. And you got to get out there in the clubs. You can't get funny just sitting in your basement. You got to get up there in front of an audience and find out if it really works with real people, not just making your dog laugh. And to me, the biggest reason to get funnier is getting people to laugh. It makes the world a better place. One of my joys in life is knowing that I've trained over 3,000 people that are now out there bringing laughter to the world. And you got to figure, if there's one thing the world needs, it's more laughter. So go, be funny.